Welcome to Virtuous Society. I'm your host, Itamar, where we explore the art of web-free gaming, community building, and much more. Today, I'm very excited to have Tom Gayner, co-founder and CEO of Levellr, a community management tool that provides detailed analytics and sentiment tracking. Tom has shared his knowledge and expertise from working with huge games, artists, brands, helping them understand the value of their community and why it matters. I want to thank Tom again for his time. This call was a real blast for me, and I think it was super insightful. Enjoy the episode. Hey, Tom. Welcome to Virtual Society.
Hey, it's Mark. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. I want to dive straight into it and ask you first and foremost, what is Levellr and why is it important?
So Levellr is a community management software business that really we built Itamar to help our customers to grow, to manage, and to monetize their communities with a focus on community platforms. Today we plug into Discord, we also plug into Telegram, and as we continue to grow and scale the business, we'll be building in additional platforms like Reddit. Maybe I can give you a quick history as to why we actually started this business, because I think that really kind of brings to life why we ultimately built Levellr. So we started about 3.5 years ago, and both myself and my co-founder and CTO, Ben Barber-Smith, have a history working in community building. I worked with major blue chip brands like Nike, MasterCard, AB InBev. I then worked for a Twitch equivalent where I was focused on building community around live content. Ben, my co-founder and CTO, was at YouTube for 7-8 years where he was focused on building community on the YouTube platform. And what we started seeing a few years back was that traditional social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, where we used to be part of the conversation, when those platforms were new, we were all very much involved, engaging with often smaller cohorts of users and people we knew in those communities. We saw that they were shifting towards short form algorithmic content and really becoming more broadcast channels, right? Places where we now scroll, consume, and from a marketing perspective, very much kind of top of funnel. That's where you're trying to get first eyeballs. But what we saw was this created a white space for conversation and for engagement and for interaction. And platforms like Discord and Reddit were starting to come up more in the conversation. And so as community builders ourselves, we were starting to test building communities on these platforms. And what we found very early on was real opportunity, because we can actually bring together this highly engaged audience around one passion point, whether that be a game, whether that be a sport, whether that be a music artist, whether that be a brand. An opportunity that you couldn't really get on the social platforms. But it also prompted a lot of questions that Ben and I then wanted to answer, and challenges that came with community building. And we really felt that nobody had built for businesses focused on community building. And in this era and age, as I'm sure we'll talk about more, this shift to community building, the tools to effectively manage those communities. And so we went on the journey of starting to build Levellr, and ultimately 3.5 years later are now working with a lot of businesses across gaming, consumer and music to help them build communities on those platforms that I mentioned.
That's very interesting. So you're pretty much our first guest that isn't Web3 native or coming from gaming. You're very much, you're coming from a community perspective to the fullest, which is very interesting to me specifically because this show is all about community, and I'm the head of community for Game 7. So I wanted to ask, you're working with a lot of brands and artists that want to build their own community. Why? Why they are looking to build a community rather than keep it as an audience or just a user base and that's it?
Well, I think the first thing to talk about, which is actually consistent across all of our customers. So, really our kind of core user is in the gaming industry, and then we're working with some large consumer brands and some very large music artists. What is consistent, Itamar, across all of those different verticals right now is a challenge around customer acquisition, right? Facebook advertising is twice as expensive as it was a year ago, and it's twice as expensive as it was a year before that. In gaming in particular, we're seeing that Apple and others are kind of putting a bit of a fire hose on the industry with discussions that I'm sure many people have have had already. We're moving into a post-cookie world where you're not going to be able to track users as you once were and retarget them on multiple platforms. You're going to need to start owning first-party data. And actually, if we talk about, this is not just gaming, this is the same for music. The competition is unheralded, right? In gaming, 16,000 games will be launched on Steam this year. There were almost 5,000 console games released in 2023. There are now 700,000 games that exist on Google and app stores. If we look at the music industry, we have a Spotify integration with Discord, so we can show our customers what fans are listening to in the community. On average, fans are streaming 22 songs a day, right? So they're listening to a large cohort of artists and new artists. So that all of this means that when you get a user to come through the funnel that becomes a customer, you have to hold on to them for dear life. And that has never been more relevant than now. Of course, businesses have always thought about retention, but it's becoming more and more important. And that's why you're hearing language like super fans and super fandom in the music industry, where there's this real focus and understanding of, hey, actually, it's not about speaking to 100%. It's about, the kind of Pareto principle, that 20%, the real super fans who are driving most of the revenue. People talk about whales in gaming and in the Web3 space. There's commonality across these verticals. And so I think the first thing to really hit on is that point of, it's getting really hard to get new customers. And so you've got to find ways to keep them. And what we kept on hearing from customers were, let's take TikTok or Instagram as a platform. Fantastic for virality, right? Virality in a way that's probably harder to get out of a platform like Discord or harder to get out of a platform like Reddit. That's where you're going to get mass reach and mass eyeballs. Mm-hmm. But how do you then turn that user into a customer or a fan or a whale? How do you convert them? Where are they then going to go? Because once they've seen your video, they're scrolling on to the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And when is your video next going to come back up? And I think really what the industry is understanding is top of funnel kind of, and then coming down. And where are we going to bring people that really want to be a part of the conversation, that care about our business and care about what we're doing? Where are we going to give them space? Where are they going to be able to be part of the conversation? And if we look at the history of kind of social interaction, I don't think what's happening today is new. We go through these cyclical moments. When I was growing up, conversation happened on web-based forums. As a Chelsea football fan, I was on a platform called the shedend.com talking about Chelsea. I was on Football Manager forums. Ben, my co-founder, was on Dungeons and Dragons forums. But that then shifted into social media platforms, which, as we talked about earlier, we were talking on those in the early days. But that's now shifted on social platforms into short form content. And that's created the space for platforms like Discord and Reddit to come up. We've always, as users, wanted a space to not only be able to talk ourselves, but to find like-minded people with shared interests. And we're just seeing the next iteration of it. And I think it's changing from a few people testing it, a few people jumping onto Discord, or a few people testing Reddit into, and by the way, Itamar, you said that we're one of the first to talk about other verticals like consumer and music. Technology, Web3 often goes first, gaming then often follows, music then follows, sport then follows, brand then follows. We're seeing this pattern again. We are now moving into more of a crescendo and tipping point moment where we're going from the early adopters on the bell curve into the mass market is now starting to see and realize the opportunity and come to these platforms.
That's super interesting, because the cyclical nature of it was to me very clear after we had our first conversation, because I saw it, but I didn't, because I'm in my own Web3 gaming world where everyone are using Discord. And then when I talked to you guys and you told me the plethora of clients that you have, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like I didn't know that Fred again would like that he have a Discord community. And that's something that we're seeing now more with content creators and streamers, and people are starting to just ship their audience into a community form. And that's a very interesting turn of events from my perspective, from someone who has been doing it in his own like small world for a while now, and now we're seeing other people kind of adopting the same tactics. Why do you think specifically Discord and Telegram are the ones that currently are the one that win and are most used?
So, look, I think what we spoke about before there were some of the kind of the tailwinds and the trends that are driving the market to these spaces. But the other thing that's core and key in any customer or fan engagement is distribution. And, Telegram is now in the top 5 most used apps in the world. So there's an audience size that people can't ignore. Discord has 200 million monthly average users. 35% of Gen Z in the US now say that it's their platform of choice. And the particular audience on Discord, that kind of highly gamer focused, 70% of users, by the way, on the platform on Discord say that they're there for gaming activities. That is a really, really rich audience that a lot of businesses want to try and tap into. And it's hard to find them on other platforms to be that focused. So that is driving certain businesses and brands to come and look at the platform. So we are seeing AI and startups. This was AI and startups are moving to the platform. This was kicked off by Midjourney. You now have 20 million people in their Discord community.
Yeah.
The rest of that vertical is now coming along with it. You're seeing AI companies popping up communities every day. Within Discord, they can tick multiple boxes. They can now test new beta products or alpha products and get real-time feedback. They can try and find new users or convert users. They can build stronger relationships with existing users. They're now increasingly moving customer support and tickets into Discord because that's where it can happen in real time. And you can also build the frameworks to manage that and connect it into your intercom or your existing system.
Yeah, there are integrations as well. With
ticking a load of boxes for them. And then we're also seeing, music is doing the same. Not every music artist is going to work on Discord or Telegram. But if you've got a highly engaged audience and a young audience, it's likely going to work. And then in the kind of brand space, Adobe have 8 communities, one for Photoshop, one for Illustrator. Microsoft have communities on the platform now. Multiple large brands that, again, want to speak to the type of audience that exist on the platform, often with a tech focus. You cannot get that level of engagement, conversation, feedback from social platforms, nor does it make sense to try and create your own community, your own white label community on your own website. Because guess what? Building habits is almost, it's such a difficult task.
Yeah, getting people to log into your specific forum or website, it's unrealistic, really.
It just hardly ever works unless you've got crazy, crazy scale. So go where those users are. And this is what is driving people towards the platforms that we've been speaking about.
So why should I, as a musician, why should I want those super fans? Like, obviously, I believe maybe I'm incorrect in saying it, but people that are let's skip the musician example. You're being paid by people streaming your music and people pretty much coming to your shows. Why should I bother and build a community for those people?
I mean, first of all, I think if we start to actually just look at some of the data around super fandom, on Spotify, 2% of listeners drive, 98% of streams. So these users are highly, highly engaged, and they're putting their hand in their wallets And what we're seeing is that music artists want to reward those fans. We are seeing a huge amount of e-commerce being done on platforms. So a lot of ticket sales. We have a great example with one of our customers, Fallout Boy, who offered tickets exclusively in Discord before it went live to the wider market, and they sold $2 million worth of tickets in 24 hours, and they only had 10,000 users in the community. I mean, it was crazy numbers. We're seeing a lot of merchandise from clothing to vinyls being sold on the platform. And actually, when you speak to artists, there's a real frustration from them that often tickets and merch aren't getting into the hands of their genuine fans, right?
Because people are buying it and reselling it, pretty much.
There's a scalper issue with some of the large ticketing platforms, and there's touting and all sorts of tactics that mean that prices get driven up. So you're now sidetracking that. You're building a relationship with your true fans, your core fans. You're rewarding them whilst also in the process monetizing them. And I think the second thing that we're seeing is, whilst a platform like Discord might actually be a closed space, right? So, you're not going to get SEO on the content that's on that platform like you might on others. We're seeing really powerful social loops happening from in-platform to out of platform. So if I talk about music specifically, and I think this is the same for gaming, but from a language perspective, music often talk about their Discord community and users as their street team. They're the micro influencers. They're the people that are going and shouting about your product. They're your evangelists. And we are seeing artists saying, hey guys, I'm trying to get my album to #1. Go and give it a listen. Or, hey, my new song is about a breakup. It would be amazing if you could jump on your TikTok and you could do a video about your breakup story and tag my song on it.
Yeah,
and actually what we're seeing is then the reach on social is significant, because you're galvanizing all of these users in your community who want to shout about you, right? Who want to be part of your journey. And I think the third thing that really inspires us actually on our journey and the vision of what we're building at Levellr is, historically at Tamar, businesses and brands have built for, not with customers, right? They create products, they ship them, and they move on to the next. And what we're now seeing in platforms like Discord is a world in where our customers, including music artists and gaming companies and brands, are building with their users. They're asking them for feedback. They want them to be part of the development process. So a lot of our customers we have some gating functionality with our tooling, which means that we can only give certain users access to your Discord community. A lot of our gaming customers are using that to run alpha or beta testing for new games. Fred again is literally dropping different songs into his album and letting fans vote on what he should then write and go into the album. I mean, that's really fun. This is a total step change to what we've had before. And none of these things are really possible on traditional social platforms. So yeah, I think it's just a really exciting moment and shift.
It seems like almost like we talked about it as a cycle, but it seems like almost like an evolution, because from my recollection, at least from early Facebook, MySpace and stuff, yeah, we had conversations there, but it was more, okay, I'm posting something, then someone is posting something else 15 minutes later. That's not the experience on Discord. Discord, it's a full-blown conversation. It's you texting someone else. Like it's very fast.
Right. But when you at Tamar started doing that, as Web3 started to grow and during that kind of COVID period, that probably felt, I would imagine, quite new. And it was very new. But for sure. What you innovators have done have also now laid the foundation for others to see the opportunity. And these things take time, right? What I'm talking about, probably to a lot of your listeners, they're going, yeah. Obviously, we've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years. But it takes time to then bleed actually into the wider market. And now we're starting to see it happen.
Interesting. So if we look back at traditional social media, like early days, how do you see the fast pace of Discord possibly both helping and not so much to companies now? Because from my perspective, the fast nature and the engagement of users is very much a blessing, but it could also be very overwhelming at times, and it could be detrimental at times if you can't really control it in a way. So from your perspective, because Web3 is weird, like there's money involved, people are trying to scam, like people are constantly trying to hack the Discord. I'm not sure if that's the case for more traditional channels, but we know that we had our fair share of fights with nefarious actors. How do you see just the sheer volume and speed of engagement affect your more traditional clients, both gaming and other?
I mean, look, it's a really important question, and it is a different skill set, right? If we think about what marketeers have been trained to do over the last decade, it's been, how do I create short and long form content? Mm-hmm. And then how do I ship that to users, whether that's organic, ads, etc. Now you've got to be able to manage thousands, sometimes millions of users that all have a microphone. It's a totally different skill set. And I think this moves the conversation tomorrow into actually more about like strategy and management, because everybody having a microphone creates significant benefit and opportunities. But as you say, you've got to manage that, right? If everybody can just, spit anything they want into the ether, you're going to create an unhealthy ecosystem. If you don't think about where you're trying to drive certain types of conversations within the community, you're not going to end up getting deep conversations, because then somebody else is jumping in and talking about something else. If you're not setting up your forums properly, so people can't easily find Q&As that are coming up all the time, the conversation's going to die because somebody jumps in with the same question. So I think what we're moving to here is, from a technology point of view, what can we use to help actually build and manage a healthy community? And that will be around moderation and scaling and how do we get insights from it? And then from a community management point of view and moderation point of view, how are we going to be smart and strategically clever about how we set up these spaces to get the most value out of it? And if you do not do either of those things, and if you don't have that expertise, you might not get the benefits that community building can provide.
That's for sure. we saw, like, with my span in community building, and I started with WhatsApp, like really, like if I'm frank about it, like my first community is very much WhatsApp based. Like we had like a Facebook group, and then we had a Facebook page. Those were pretty much serving us for I would say just announcements and stuff, with the entire conversation just being on WhatsApp. And back then it wasn't us trying to build a community or anything. We just had a show. People wanted to talk somewhere. Then we started a WhatsApp group because everyone here are using WhatsApp. So it like there was no real thinking about it, but it goes back to what you already said. Like they have the users, like it's easy for them to join WhatsApp. So we've done it.
We love WhatsApp communities, and it's great for small local communities. Unfortunately, it doesn't really scale, right? So it's not going to work for a lot of businesses unless you want to do broadcast content, but then you're back into me speaking at you rather than creating a space for genuine conversation.
Yeah, you have the announcement piece. Like we had, I think the big one had like 400 members in it, and it was a bit too much for a WhatsApp group. So it started off really, really fast and then slowly just died down. And now you have like the 10% that are actually active. And we had a premium group pretty much that had like 50 people in it and had 3 times the messages on a given day, which is
by the way,
crazy.
the other thing that we heard from from users with WhatsApp is that's often where they are communicating with their family, with their
Yeah,
wives,
they're
mothers,
already there.
sons, daughters, and actually they kind of wanted that separation.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I can see it. I can understand why. That's for sure. Especially if it's a more professional one. The one that I'm referring to wasn't a professional one. It was more just like a hobby turned into somewhat of a business. So traditional social media platforms had, or still have really, just clear monetization path. How do you view kind of the value extraction piece from Discord, Telegram, Reddit today? Because it's a bit different.
Indeed. And it's kind of being built in front of our eyes at the moment.
Yes.
Because it's not clearly defined like the advertising layer that's been built around the traditional social media platforms.
I'm also not sure what's your view of it, but from my perspective, Reddit advertisement is very much like connected to phishing scams. That's the connection that I believe any web-free native user will have with Reddit advertisement specifically.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look, I think there's two things that we can talk about here, which is kind of in-community monetization, and then advertising, which is coming in, but maybe in a slightly different format. So let's talk about the first one. We've spoken about the benefits of community building, and that really at your core, what you're doing is just bringing together a group of people with a shared passion around a topic, whether that be gaming, music, brand. And by having that, engaged audience in one space, they are going to be receptive to opportunities to purchase. So, in gaming, and by the way, I should mention that we've actually been able to prove that on average, a Discord user is 6 times more valuable than a non-Discord user on average, right? Based upon spend. We've had customers tell us that, on average, the lifetime value of a Discord user is 3 times that of non-Discord users. This is a valuable audience. So in gaming, we're seeing more, purchasing of skins or in-game products, which, by using our software, we're building integrations into either our customers' CRMs or platforms like Ticketmaster or Shopify, where we can actually start to track and start to get a dollar value of one of these users. Because one of the challenges as larger businesses,
to measure it,
one of the challenges as they come to this platform is, hey, we've got all of these users in Discord or all of these users in Reddit. There's so much conversation happening. It's amazing. But I have no idea what the dollar value of one of these users are. It's still like a dark space, not just from a revenue point of view, but also from insights. If you're getting 50,000 messages a day, how do you pull that out, right? Which is, by building sentiment analysis and some of the key data points is super important for customers. So a lot of monetization in platform, but it's done in a way that, again, is often adding value to customers because they want to purchase, but you're giving it to them early or you're giving them exclusives. And I think it's being done on the whole in a really tasteful way. And then the second bucket is advertising. So look, Reddit's nearly doing $1 billion in advertising, and yes, have they probably had some low quality businesses advertising on the platform? Sure, but again, the narrative and the market shift is going to continue to change that.
Yeah.
We're going to see more and more high quality brands advertising on that platform. Telegram
and that builds trust, really. I think it's a very Web3 thing. Like it's a very Web3 first thought, because not really anyone, like I'm sure there were legit projects that advertised on Reddit, but from my perspective and from I would say most of the people who were active during the last 4 to 5 years, like Reddit advertisement was very much used for rug pulls. Like that was to just fish out people that just don't know better.
Yeah.
And that just left a mark. It's not necessarily it's really not Reddit's fault, but that's now part of the brand from that small niche, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're aware of that and working pretty hard.
I'm sure they are.
And then look on Discord, they launched Quests earlier this year, which is advertising but in a different name, which is allowing users, if people haven't tested it or seen the format, it's essentially where a gaming publisher or brand can launch quests across thousands, millions of Discord servers, which encourages a user on the platform to take a certain action within game to get a reward. Everything that we've understood from our relationship with Discord is that it's been a fantastic success so far and getting very positive feedback, not only from the gaming businesses, but also from users. I think Jason Citron, the founder of Discord, has been very transparent about his concern around advertising and really trying to not go down that route. I think this is a soft approach, but actually, again, shows us a different way of being able to speak to audiences. I have no doubt that there'll be consumer brands knocking on the door of Discord and trying to get in there. I think they're being very focused on only doing this with gaming businesses currently. So, it's one for us to watch and see how that evolves. Two things: in community monetization, and as with any platform, an advertising layer is starting to be built across all of these platforms.
Yeah. And to Discord, like the Discord questing piece, I'm not sure if they got the idea from Web3 stuff, like obviously Game 7. As a questing platform, there are several other questing platforms, both gaming and unrelated to gaming, that was very much a leading, I would say, engagement tactic throughout the space, because it hits. Like it's more fun for the user. It's a better experience for the user. Right. And it's what the developer and publisher actually want. Like they want people to interact with the game. So instead of trying to shove someone the idea of, hey, maybe you should play this game down their throat, actually having a quest and be like, okay, you can do this thing, get to this level, complete this side quest in order to get this reward, very much hit in terms of different levels of gaming, I would say, throughout, and we're seeing it just more and more and more and more and more, which is great in my opinion, because I think it's better than what we had previously.
Right, but this comes back to the bell curve example, which is Discord needed Web3
verification
to build enough brand knowledge and insight of questing for that to become a relevant product for them to start offering. And I think it talks to particularly the world that you work in, Itamar, as a hotbed for innovation. And not everything's going to work. And you guys are, from what I see, willing to test and often willing to fail. But there are a few things that will come through that we will end up seeing, not for a while, but in a few years' time, that starts to move to the mainstream.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful of that, because I think probably the last 2 years or so, it's weird, because it often feels like most of the progress is made during the bear, whilst most of the excitement is during the bull, and then people are just going crazy for stuff that already exists, while the actual work is actually going on when people are mostly not that excited. How do you think game developers specifically can determine the value they get from community? So you said you had some clients that managed to pretty much prove that a community member is worth 6 times a user that isn't active on Discord and isn't considered an active community member. How can I measure it? Like, how can I, if I'm now a game developer, how can I ensure that I have those numbers and I can verify that what I'm doing is actually working? Right.
Look, that's kind of why our business exists, is because it's been really hard for community builders and businesses to to extract that
To dive
value and
deeper.
prove that value. And actually, I think this was alluring to us. We really thought that we were going to be speaking to a lot of community managers when we started building Levellr, and community managers very much are using our products on a daily basis. But actually, we're working with really wide teams within these businesses. So you might be in player support or customer support teams. It was hard for you to track how many tickets you were managing, and then whether you were getting positive or negative feedback from the community. And so we built Sentiment to manage that. Strategy and analytics or data analytics teams, very hard to really understand if your game is moving the needle or you're launching new bundles. What impact has that had on your users? Do you know if you're driving more revenue from those communities? We're helping to kind of drive those insights to them. Digital media teams, often working with things like user-generated content. There's, on average, our customers get about 20,000 pieces of content a year on their Discord server, but that goes into 15 different channels.
Mm-hmm.
When there's 50,000 messages a day, how are you easily going to find that? So we have essentially built a digital asset management tool, so those teams can now easily come and find all the content from their community and use it in real time. You're a community manager feeding into a CMO who's going, well, our paid ads are doing well over here. What's happening on Discord? What's happening in the community? What's the sentiment? Do we know how we're monetizing them? What's the impact been of X, Y, or Z? And that's been really hard for them, despite the fact that, often they know the value of what they're doing, and that is where their players exist. And so we are just trying to transform that and give our users those data and insights to make it much easier to not only understand the value, but then use those insights to make better decisions with their players.
I love it. And in terms of just the value of the community itself, because everyone understands the logic behind the value of community. Because if you're playing a game and you're now part of a community and you're now playing duo queue instead of solo queue in League of Legends, you probably are having more fun because you're speaking to someone and now it's a shared experience, and logically, we get it, we understand it. Just very difficult to measure, very difficult to showcase, okay, how did this player behaved before they joined the community, after they joined the community have been lurking a little bit, and then once they fully became integrated within the community. What was the impact outside of the game, on their personal life? Because we talked a few times about the fact that communities, and it's a human necessity. It comes up everywhere because we need it. That's how it is. We're an animal that lives in groups and thrive in community. So what does that mean to someone's personal life if he found their community in your Discord? How can you measure it? What does that mean for the brand now? Sure, we're talking business and we're talking about the financial impact of how much that user is now more inclined to buy. But underneath that, there is a reason why he's now more inclined to buy, because now you matter more to him, and you matter more to him because now your community is part of the overall brand. What does that mean for the individual? Which I think is a bigger conversation, and it's pretty much impossible to measure. Or maybe impossible. I won't say, or maybe not impossible, maybe just very difficult and we didn't figure it out yet. But since you guys are doing data analytics, I would love it if you would explore that avenue of it as well sometime in the future.
I mean, look, I think there is something in the sentiment analysis of that, and understanding a user's discussion around your product and positivity and optimism, and you can ask for NPS scores, and you can ask people to do forms and all of the traditional data gathering formats, but we know that there's bias involved there. Really, the easiest way to understand is people are having conversations on Discord and they're being honest. So I want to be able to transform that data into helping you try to understand some of those things. Not just are they buying more of the game, but how do they really feel about this, and how is this changing the way that they look and walk and behave in the world.
Yeah, this is the most important piece for, I would say, any developer, like if we're talking about gaming, so any developer, any studio, to understand like what his audience feel, what does the player base feels. That's kind of what we're selling at the core of it. Like you're selling a feeling, and you need to understand how the people react to it. So
and something that we have heard from our customers is that they can find that out first and feel the pulse of the community first in Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If there's a bug in the game, they often hear about that first on Discord before anybody even puts in a ticket. And we know that these things, and there's plenty of examples over the last year of gaming business share prices being slashed and users walking away from a game. These companies truly live or die by their community. And, being able to get real-time alerts and pings and notifications on what's happening within those 50,000 messages a day is not just important, it is vital, because you're not going to be able to get ahead of stuff or really understand what's happening unless you're getting those insights out. And I think this is now changing. I think that community managers have been underserved, undervalued, working, crazy hours nonstop with thousands of users, thousands of messages. It's noisy, it's loud, it's difficult, and yet they are adding so much value. And too often do they sit kind of somewhere in the organization of the business where budgets aren't funneling down, and investment and time and energy is not put into it enough. And I think that is now changing, and community managers are going to see, and I really hope continue to see the shift around that role and the importance of that over the coming years. And this is not just in gaming. I mean, if I look at the music labels, they don't have digital marketing managers. They've changed job titles to community managers. Right?
That's exactly what we've. So that's exactly I would say your generic Web3 project in 2021 pretty much flipped the script entirely. So from having like one community manager and 3 social media managers, you just had the opposite. You had 1 social media manager and 3 community managers. Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, so I'll try to ask the last question for the benefit of really all of us. What would you say is the most effective strategies that you saw in order to both grow and keep communities engaged from all of the different plethora of communities that you guys have been working with?
I mean, I think rather than kind of going into like very specific examples, because specific examples are often very specific to a business. Yeah. The challenge that I see most often is businesses and brands deciding they want to go and build a community because that's the hot thing to do at that moment in time. But they don't ask themselves why and then what they're going to deliver. So, the first piece of advice for me is, well, what is the purpose of your community, right? If you are KFC or you are Chelsea Football Club, who I mentioned earlier, whatever your business or product is, like, what is the purpose of you actually having a community? And what then do you want to deliver to the users of your community? How are you going to build a community, right? And for me, community is not just you as the community owner being able to have a conversation with your users. It's peer-to-peer, it's user to user. How are you going to create that, not just on day 1, right, but on year 3? Because too often we see people come in, put some energy in for a month, and then they go away. Building a community is not just for Christmas. This is, you have to come into this with the mindset of, I'm investing in this and I'm investing into this for the long term, because otherwise you're wasting time, and just the opportunity cost isn't worth it to your wider business. And then I think attached with that, so like purpose and then value, is really thinking about the goals for your community. I'm surprised how often I hear very large gaming businesses with very large communities where community managers have just been told to go and just run it. And I ask them, well, what are the goals here? And they don't have them, and they're not attached to business goals. That shows me again a lack of understanding at senior leadership and management levels as to what the value is here. This is changing, but community goals should be tied to business goals. And if you can start to thread all those things together, you have a much better chance for success. And yes, you've then got tactics underneath that, which should be unique to your business and your brand. But you've got to have those things in place first, because otherwise, you're going to struggle to build long-term retention.
I like it. One quick follow-up. How do I tie down? So how do I tie down my organizational business objectives with my community objectives? How do I make that connection? Obviously, it's a case-by-case basis. But
I think the starting point is you've got to bring the wider business into this. You can't sit in a silo as the community team. Mm-hmm. You need to have your wider marketing team involved and bought in, getting excitement from the team that's working on strategy and data and analytics about the opportunity. Your revenue-focused team's excited about the opportunity of community. If you can bring people together and have that discussion up front, you're going to see much more value down the line. Now, the response might be, well, I can't do that. I'm just going to have to launch it to prove value. If that's the way, then come give us a call and hopefully we can give you the analytics to help you then have that conversation.
That's a good one. That's a good way to close things off. I really want to thank you. It was a fascinating call. We didn't have a chance to go through everything that we wanted to ask. So we would have to bring you on at another time to complete it. Just for the sake of our listeners, where can they find Levellr? Where can they find you?
You'll find us on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. We've just started creating YouTube content around community building. So you can go and find some more content there. And we've got a blog sharing lots of updates on best-in-class community building and case studies. So I look forward to
I'll check it out myself as well.
Speaking to some of them. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me, Itamar.
Perfect. Thank you very much. As always, all of the links are going to be in the description. Don't forget to obviously share, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on whatever platform you're currently on. And we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.